Now, Zelensky has said he won't sign a deal which doesn't have any security guarantee in it. So there is, according to the latest reports, a very vaguely worded offer that the US will support Ukraine having security guarantees. But again, I mean, what does that mean, really? It certainly doesn't mean the US is going to put feet on the ground to defend Ukraine. And of course, any security guarantees are, subject to whatever peace deal is worked out. So there's some idea there that Ukraine will have some sort of, free and independent status as the result of this. So that could be interpreted as a concession from Trump to Ukraine.
The business deal Donald Trump wants with Ukraine would hand America mineral rights worth billions, some say trillions. And it's on that deal, the deal that'll be on the desk when the Ukrainian president pitches up at the White House at his meeting, which is scheduled for Friday, that Volodymyr Zelensky and his friends in Europe are pinning their hopes of extracting a security guarantee against Russia from Donald Trump. The stakes could not be higher, as they say in the old cliche, which I guess explains the tale of high-level brinkmanship we're watching play out now in real time this afternoon, and which we're following and analysing on today's show. Donald Trump told us a moment ago, told his cabinet for the benefit of the world, that Zelensky, he was going to the White House on Friday. He said that was confirmed and that he would sign the deal. A little earlier on, the White House was saying that maybe there'd be no point if Zelensky had not decided he was going to support the deal that America put on the table. Where does it leave us? I suppose, with the history of Donald Trump, we have to wait and see, don't we? We simply, I guess, will not, at this point, take what Donald Trump about a confirmed meeting and a confirmed signing quite at face value just yet. Now, so far, Donald Trump has succeeded in forcing America's NATO partners to stump up more promises of higher spending on their own defence in Europe. Keir Starmer is just the latest leader. Today in the Commons, defending the deep cuts in overseas aid that will pay for that higher spending. Now, Starmer won't say so in plain English, but his hand has been forced by the threat of Donald Trump rapidly retreating from the defence of Europe. And now we wait for the next crucial stage in this drama to play out. Will Zelensky sign on the dotted line when the White House pen's pressed into his hand? What will the deal be worth by way of American protection to go with American profits? Without that protection, how can Britain send troops to Ukraine to oversee a ceasefire? That's if there's to be a ceasefire. And what are the mineral rights actually worth anyway? Donald Trump's demands have been described not just by his critics as extortionate, even compared extraordinarily and not entirely satirically to the business model of an organised crime syndicate. The world order has changed so fast it's hard to keep up, but let's keep trying. In the last few minutes, Donald Trump has been speaking at his first cabinet meeting. He started by addressing this meeting with President Zelensky.
We're doing very well with Russia, Ukraine. President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement, and that'll be on rare earth and other things. As you know, we're in for probably $350 billion. Europe is in for $100 billion.
Well, as expected, Elon Musk was there too. He made this appearance and spoke about the word of his Department of Government Efficiency, as it's called.
And I should say, we will make mistakes. We won't be perfect, but when we make a mistake, we'll fix it very quickly. So, for example, with USAID, one of the things we accidentally canceled very briefly was Ebola, Ebola prevention. I think we all want Ebola prevention. So we restored the Ebola prevention immediately, and there was no interruption. But we do need to move quickly if we're to achieve a $1 trillion deficit reduction in financial year 2026. It requires saving $4 billion per day, every day, from now through the end of September. But we can do it, and we will do it.
And President Trump was asked if any member of the cabinet around the table did not approve of what he was doing.
Hey, Elon, let the cabinet speak just for a second. Is anybody unhappy with Elon? If you are, well, throw him out of here. Is anybody unhappy?
Now, just before we came on air, the White House was saying about Zelensky's visit, what's the point if he hasn't made up his mind yet? Now, since then, of course, as we've heard, Donald Trump has, announced that Zelensky is announced that he is going to sign the contract, which does seem to be, a significant step forward from his spokesman or his colleague in his office a bit earlier on. Would it turn out that way? I guess we will have to wait and see. But that's the latest word from Donald Trump. Meanwhile, President Zelensky earlier, he gave a news conference where he discussed his coming trip to the States.
This visit before Putin is very good signal. First of all, I think so. To my mind, I don't know how it will be because I'm still in the capital, so we will see. Yes, but so what is important? That signal that before that we can ask each other very important questions, as I said, and to get answers. And before Putin, and of course before Putin will meet with the president, if they will meet, and other, it's a decision of the President Trump.
So what is going to happen now? We will watch, we will follow, we will tell you as we know, as soon as we know. We can meanwhile talk now to the Times correspondent Richard Spencer. Richard, welcome to the programme.
Good evening.
Richard, I wonder what you make of what we've been hearing in the last hour or so. The doubts about Volodymyr Zelensky going to the White House at all on Friday. Then Donald Trump tells us that, yeah, it's official, that's definitely going to happen. Where does it leave it in your mind?
Yeah, I think he's going to go. I think they'll be signing of a deal of some sort. Just as always with President Trump, you have to distinguish between all the sound and noise and fury and mood music and contradictory statements, slightly wrong statements that Elon Musk referred to, and what actually ends up on paper. And as we have seen in Trump's first presidency and already in this presidency, there's a huge gulf between those two things. Yeah. So when you look at this deal, it is quite an interesting deal. It has some elements to it that relate to what President Trump has been saying over the last few weeks about Ukraine, but relate rather sort of obscurely. I mean, there is a deal there for United States to have a share in mineral exploitation in Ukraine. That's undoubtedly there. The details are pretty obscure. There's talk of a kind of a profits fund into which Ukraine will put half of its royalties, if you like, its profits, and that will be a fund that will be partly controlled by the United States. There will be an element in which that fund is then reinvested into Ukraine. The details aren't at all clear, and the time frame is very unclear. One thing we all have to remember is that all these things that President Trump is talking about, we're talking about whether it's rare earths or lithium or these other elements that, if you look into the weeds, graphite, titanium, these are the sort of new tech minerals that we're talking about. These are all unexploited. It will take years to bring any of this production on stream, even if there's a peace treaty, even if Ukraine is secure, even if those deposits are returned to Ukrainian control, and half of them are currently under Russian control. It's a totally different thing from what President Trump has been talking about, but it's not without interest.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the value then of a minerals deal, which Trump tells us is about to be signed by Volodymyr Zelensky, he said, well, a lot of it is highly speculative. It's certainly very long term. But of course, we know also that China controls a lot of the world's supply of these resources. So there's a clear American interest in trying to break that hold.
Yeah, so if you break it down, it becomes quite amusing, actually, I have to say. So take lithium, right? So, I mean, I think most of our listeners all know that lithium is in our mobile phone batteries. It's also in our electric car batteries. It's a really important element. We're all warned that, not to start lithium fires on aircraft because that's really bad. So we all know what lithium is. It is true that China currently controls 2/3 of the world's production of the lithium that you put into those batteries. However, So that's good. That's something. And Ukraine has a third of Europe's supplies of lithium reserves, of untapped lithium still sitting in the ground. So yeah, you can see outline deal, great for everybody. In fact, in the West, if Ukraine and America are both can be considered part of the West after all this, dig Ukraine's lithium out, process it, and then you have a rival supply to China. However, look in the weeds, not quite as said. Lithium is mostly processed by China, but half it's dug out of the ground in Australia, and a lot of the rest is dug out of the ground in Latin America.
Yeah.
China has a control because it's built lithium refineries. So it's not really about the raw material that's at issue. It's whether you're building the refineries.
Yes.
Now, interestingly, in light of this deal, America has only one major lithium refinery, and that opened in December. And who built it? Elon Musk built it for Tesla, because Tesla needs lithium for its electric batteries. So, start joining the dots of the weeds of this deal, the things that aren't spelled out. You start to get some rather interesting findings.
Meanwhile, Richard, I see reported that Vladimir Putin is offering America his own deal on minerals, and a lot of the Ukrainian reserves are sitting in Russia-occupied territory. So this all fits in with the analysis of a carve-up of the world by strongmen, these strongmen running the major powers.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's the headline. Look in the details. It has to be said, the world has been carved up by major powers for a long time, and always is going to be, I suspect. And that's the cynical view. When you look at that headline, exactly, you're completely right. Russia itself has huge mineral reserves, and as I say, Russia has seized control in the last few years of, for example, one of the big lithium mines. I was talking about lithium. One of the big lithium, not mines, reserves is in the area of southeast Ukraine that Russia seized in 2022. Another really big deposit is currently 4 miles away from the front line, and Russia is advancing on that. The place where that deposit would be mined at the moment. So yes, but what of course we don't know is what the carve up of the Ukraine peace treaty that Trump's talking about will look like. We don't know whether Putin will restore Ukrainian territory. He says not. We don't know if any deal Ukraine that can be offered that doesn't give territory back to Ukraine is acceptable to Zelensky. We don't know what that's going to be look like. But what it does look like is America saying, yeah, whatever happens, we don't really care that much as long as we get access to some of that mineral wealth.
Yes.
But as I say, unless America builds processing facilities to actually, make the finished product, that doesn't really mean much. And it certainly doesn't mean much for the forthcoming years. It takes 4 years minimum,
yes,
possibly nearer 10, to build a lithium mine and a lithium processing facility. So, we're talking about a very long way ahead, and it doesn't really get us any further in terms of what a Russian-Ukrainian peace deal would look like.
Right. I mean, that's really interesting context. And just lastly, on this idea of a peace deal in Ukraine, I mean, you say you believe that we can now expect Zelensky to turn up at the White House on Friday and to sign this mineral deal, which he has been saying again and again has to include a security guarantee. If that's what is in the deal, what sort of guarantee do you reckon that will add up to, Richard?
Right. Well, so the current reporting on this, I mean, this is where the to and fro is going on. I mean, as I say, the current deal as originally reported, left out two very important things. It left out this Trump original demand for $500 billion of reserves just to be handed over to him. I mean, that was, as I say, was a sort of slightly fanciful idea in the first place, for reasons I've said. Zelensky's demand was for a security guarantee and from America, and that also was left out. Now, Zelensky has said he won't sign a deal which doesn't have any security guarantee in it. So there is, according to the latest reports, a very vaguely worded offer that the US will support Ukraine having security guarantees. But again, I mean, what does that mean, really? It certainly doesn't mean the US is going to put feet on the ground to defend Ukraine. And of course, any security guarantees are, subject to whatever peace deal is worked out. So there's some idea there that Ukraine will have some sort of, free and independent status as the result of this. So that could be interpreted as a concession from Trump to Ukraine. It doesn't really say anything about what that guarantee is.
No, it's about as vague as it could be. Richard Spencer, thank you again for coming on to the programme. Now, let's consult Michael Martins, who has been described in the past as the US Embassy's person in Westminster. That was during the Donald Trump first presidency. Michael, welcome.
Nice to see you again, John. How you doing?
I'm well. Michael, so you've been following what's been going on this afternoon. Now we've heard the president say that Volodymyr Zelensky is going to the White House on Friday as scheduled, and that he is definitely going to sign that minerals contract. Do you take it that that is indeed the case? That's now done? That the deal is signed and sealed, or very soon will be?
I think the signaling is as done as we're going to get it at this stage. I think the deal itself, the details will be fleshed out over the next weeks, months, and the like. I think in practical terms, though, I think the U.S. side, President Trump will have got kind of what he wants out of this so far, in the sense of his position will be economic deterrence, will be as far as he's willing to go. Instead of boots on the ground, it'll be let American companies have first dibs on mineral rights. And at the same time, those minerals are going to be used in the continued American push to decouple reliance on China. And I know the previous guest mentioned about refining lithium, but there are just a wide list of other minerals that the U.S. has been trying to decouple outside of the Chinese market through things like the Atlantic Declaration.
Right, and Michael, when you talk about economic deterrence, do you mean that simply the idea that simply doing business with Ukraine when it comes to its mineral reserves, that would be enough of a deterrent, or at least as much of a deterrent as America's prepared to offer?
I don't know if that's going to be enough for Putin if he wants to go back.
Do you think that's as far as Trump may be prepared to go?
I think so far that's the signal. I don't think he wants to. In many ways, if you look at the first time President Trump came to power, he did as best as he could to overturn what came before him through President Obama, whether it was the Paris Climate Accords or TTIP or TPP, right? So in the sense, you have the same sort of playbook playing out. I don't think he wants boots on the ground. His base don't want boots on the ground. I think the next stage will be getting European NATO partners, especially ones that aren't paying the 2% minimum, to volunteer if they want to do like a reassurance force, as PM Starmer mentioned. So I think that'll be the next step. In terms of economic deterrence, though, having a big American company, and Richard said, Tesla might have an interest. If you're Russia, are you going to bomb a Tesla factory? That's an interesting question. So I think you end up in a space where you can do deterrence without boots on the ground will be kind of the mindset, and at the same time you get the win of moving away from the reliance on Chinese rare earths and rare minerals, and equally. Again, from the U.S. side, you'll probably end up seeing, if that's the case, maybe a European supply chain that is a bit more secure. Not relying on the Black Sea, for example.
So, Michael, I think we can be crystal clear. The idea of American military boots on the ground in Ukraine, that was never going to happen. That's absolutely crystal clear. And as far as we can see, as far as we can hear from Times reporting, apart from anything else, the hope among European powers, maybe even Zelensky himself, is that America might go so far as to say, look, we'll be a backstop if we're needed, that American air power operating out of the Polish side of the border, the Romanian side of the border, might be available if it's needed. That would be way short of what Volodymyr Zelensky wants, and probably a long way short of what someone like Keir Starmer also.
Yeah, because I think that's a very different thing. I think, again, when it comes to President Trump, I don't think he wants to entangle himself any further in this conflict. He's made that clear. So the idea of providing American air support via a NATO country to Ukraine, I think for President Trump, that'll be a non-starter. Sad as that is for me to say, I don't think.
Is it possible for you then? Is it possible, Michael, that if you're right about that, and those are the terms being offered by President Trump, there's a chance of Zelensky signing that?
I think that's a question for Zelensky, but I think, as we've kind of talked about, the positions have already changed in the past week. 500 billion. That number has fallen off. At the same time, like President Zelensky has signaled that he intends to, at least he's going, like, to negotiate, if not sign, right? President Trump's the one saying he's going to sign. I don't think Zelensky has said he's going to sign. Another different type of tactic, speak for somebody else and have them walk it back, right? But I think from his perspective, I think he's going to try and get as much as possible to deter further Russian aggression. And I think that will be an area where some of his European allies will try and carve out their niche. And you saw it with Macron earlier this week. You're going to see it with Starmer and trying to put a bit more European hard power in there. The problem is obviously that European hard power is stretched, and it's like it's a longstanding issue in NATO specifically, but Europe more generally.
Yeah.
And I think when it comes down to hard power projection in Europe, there are a handful of countries that will do it, and some of them have not said that they want to.
Yeah. Well, just
so again, that'll be the next battle with this for President Trump and European leaders.
Now, last question. It's good to get your thoughts. I wonder what you think and feel when you see European commentators and senior politicians now, like Friedrich Merz, the next leader of Germany, saying that America can no longer be relied on, can no longer be trusted.
I would disagree with that. I think in practical terms, again, looking back to President Trump's first term, it ended. President Biden came in. Overnight, back to business as usual in many ways when it comes to working level relationships. I think at a working level, relationships are always going to be strong with the U.S. government and its counterparts in NATO or the U.K. or France or Germany, et cetera. I think when it comes to the top line rhetoric between world leaders, that's where, in my opinion, a lot of world leaders kind of miss the mark when it comes to dealing with Trump. And I think saying that America can't be relied on and all of these things, it's not going to really move the dial for him. I think it's like, in practical terms, what are you offering him? And I don't think many folks have figured that out yet. Like Poland is a great example of a country and leaders that did well during the first term. Like they named an airbase after him next to the border, stuff like that. Like that appeals to President Trump.
Yeah.
Macron going and saying you're making a big mistake is not going to win hearts and minds in the Trump camp. So I think they need to change their positioning and try and figure out what is the offer for the president, because ultimately he can't unilaterally withdraw from NATO anymore. So, the new Secretary of State Rubio put forward the law that changed that, but he's the commander in chief. He can move military assets out of Europe if he so chooses and do NATO light via nuclear deterrent.
Well, that is your advice to these European leaders. Michael Martins, formerly of the US Embassy under Donald Trump's first term. Thank you.